This is the Italian Citizenship Podcast, hosted by Marco Permunian and Rafael Di Furia. Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, presented by Assistance.com. Of course, we're back at it again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I am doing great, thank you. And in this episode, we wanted to give an update to a recent update to talk about the current situation and what things are looking like given the minor case issue. Recently, the team from Italian Citizenship Assistance.com was able to successfully overturn a ruling in the Court of Appeal in Torino. And so, Marco, I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about this, what things are looking like, and maybe even a little bit of background on this minor case issue.
As we have said in previous videos, there are some judges, a minority of judges, that is ruling against cases involving an ancestor who was naturalized while their child was a minor. And of course, that applies to cases that don't have an alternative ancestor, meaning that whenever there's an alternative ancestor, of course, the advice that we give to our clients is to use an alternative ancestor who either never naturalized or naturalized when their child was an adult, or naturalized in the case of women completely involuntarily and automatically. But whenever there is only one ancestor that can be used, or maybe both ancestors are in the same situation, meaning they both naturalized when their child was a minor, of course, applying for citizenship through the court system has some minor risks, because like I've said in many other videos, there is only a minority of judges that is not approving cases involving an ancestor who was naturalized while their child was a minor. The vast majority of judges in the Italian courts are approving this kind of cases. So it is currently very much advisable to pursue citizenship via the court system, even if you have an ancestor who was naturalized while their child was under the age of 21, which was the age of majority prior to 1975. Now, like you said a moment ago, a judge within the court of Torino in northern Italy was one of the few judges that last year denied a case involving an ancestor who was naturalized while their child was underage. And in that specific case, there was no alternative ancestor that could be used to successfully win the case. And like I said, the judge was part of a group of minority of judges who was not approving these kind of cases. And in fact, the case was denied. So the person lost the case. When we filed the appeal before the Court of Appeal in the city of Torino, we have informed the Court of Appeal, which is a different court in a separate building, that the arguments that were used by the judge of the lower court were wrong, and that the fact that the ancestor who was naturalized when their child was a minor should not have caused, under the law and the most common interpretation of the law, the loss of Italian citizenship for the minor child of the person who was becoming naturalized. And the Court of Appeal has agreed with us that those arguments were invalid, and therefore they overturned the decision of the lower court. By the way, the lower court was made of one judge who took the decision, whereas the Court of Appeal is made of a panel of 3 judges who take the decision together. So the decision of the Court of Appeal completely overturned the decision of the lower court, and now the petitioner has been granted citizenship directly by the Court of Appeal, thanks to the appeal that was filed by the attorneys at Italian Citizenship Assistance.com. Now, unless the Ministry of Interior files another appeal before the Supreme Court, the decision of the Court of Appeal will become final, and it can be successfully registered, and the petitioner will officially have become an Italian citizen. So right now we are in the registration process of that ruling, and that was definitely a success, because it is common knowledge. It's not easy to have a Court of Appeal in the same place where a decision was denied to overturn the decision. But of course, when the legal grounds are met, and if there are solid legal grounds, that is absolutely possible. So my advice to people is to not get discouraged by these kind of situations. Even if they happen in a minority of cases, be sure to file an appeal against a wrong decision.
Very interesting, Marco. And something I'm very curious about actually is if this case, this win, does this have the potential to affect other cases around the country? Could this actually be something that other people could use this ruling potentially to their advantage in some way by maybe referring to it? Or I don't know. How does this work in Italian law?
In the Italian legal system, the legal precedent is not binding. So the fact that we have won in a court, whether it's the Court of Appeal or the civil court, does not automatically set a case law. It can't automatically be enforced in other courts. But of course, the fact that a court of appeal now or many other lower courts agree with the non-restrictive interpretation of the law is definitely a message that is being sent by Italian judges that there is a correct interpretation of the law, which is the non-restrictive interpretation of the law. And of course, any case that is won can be used to psychologically influence the judge in a pending proceeding by showing how many civil courts or how many courts of appeals agree with the fact that a non-restrictive interpretation of the law should be used anytime there is an ancestor who was naturalized while their child was a minor.
That is absolutely fascinating. Even just playing into the psychological side of things, even if there's no proper legal bearing, that there are still ways to potentially positively affect the outcome. But I'm curious also, how did your team at Italian Citizenship Assistance prepare for this? How did you guys go through to actually push forward within this case?
Of course, whenever there is an unsuccessful case, time is of the essence because there is only a 60 days window to file an appeal. So it's very important to file an appeal promptly, or otherwise you lose the chance to appeal the case. Fortunately, the preparation of the appeal is relatively simple, meaning that it's not as complex as it is to prepare a case that goes before the civil court, because that involves the procurement of many documents, which we work on for a sometimes long time, and also the certification of the documents and the certification of the translations can take time. Now, in the case of the appeal, all of the documents that are necessary were already obtained and certified and translated, because basically we use the same exact documents that were filed at the civil court. So what we have to do is do the necessary research to make sure that the petition for the Court of Appeal is as accurate as possible and as powerful as possible. So we include, of course, all of the legal precedents, all of the information, all of the jurisprudence and opinion of legal experts and governmental offices that are involved in a citizenship case and that can provide their opinion about it. And we provide all of that information packaged in the best possible way to the Court of Appeal in order to ensure a successful outcome of the appeal.
Well, very interesting again, Marco. And just another thing that I think could be worthwhile reviewing in this episode that we've spoken in previous episodes on the topic of the minor case issue. And that is, how come it is possible that a person who might not necessarily be able to pursue their Italian citizenship anymore through a consulate or a comune, why is it that they might have success in court? Why is there this difference between these two areas of the Italian government?
On October the 3rd of 2024, the Italian Ministry of Interior released an official communication to all of the Italian consulates and municipalities by establishing that cases involving an ancestor who was naturalized while their child was a minor should be rejected. So the ministry has changed the interpretation of the law to a restrictive interpretation of the law for cases that are presented to an Italian consulate abroad or an Italian municipality. And like we have said in other episodes, the memo or directive, whatever we want to call it, issued by the Ministry of Interior, which in Italian is called circolare, is not binding for the court system, is only binding for consulates and clerks in the Italian municipalities because they are part of the Italian public administration. So the Ministry of Interior, which is the ultimate administrative body can only issue decisions to other public administrations, not to the court system, which is completely separate and it's a completely different branch of the Italian Republic. And therefore, since this directive, which we could argue whether it was fair for the government to do so, or if it was just or even in compliance with the Italian constitution, but nonetheless, it was not meant for the Italian judges, and it was not automatically applicable in any way to the Italian judges and court system, which is why if you have a case that now can no longer be presented to a consulate or a municipality due to the recent regulation that was issued on October the 3rd, you can successfully present the same identical case in an Italian court with very high chances of success, because judges are not bound in any way by the restrictive interpretation, and they're actually there. Their job is to interpret the law in a way that they can only decide. So their job is to interpret the law according to their own will, according to how they think the law should be, without being influenced in any way by other branches of the state, like the public administration. So as a matter of fact, judges, they are still choosing to interpret the law in a non-restrictive way. So they're mostly ruling that the naturalization of the ancestor while their child was a minor should not have impacted in any way the citizenship status of the minor child.
Well, thank you, Marco. And just one last question for this episode. Based on your experience and as a legal professional, what would be your recommendations to anybody who is thinking about pursuing one of these cases through a minor ancestor? What would you say would be the best ways for them potentially to move forward?
If you have an ancestor who was naturalized while their child was a minor, like I said before, the chances of success in court are still very high. But of course, I would encourage these people to look into whether they have an alternative ancestor that they can use, maybe an ancestor who was never naturalized or naturalized when their child was already an adult. And very often people are applying through a male ancestor, but they don't do research about the female ancestor, which of course is something that we immediately advise to do when they sign up for our services. So it's always important to check whether the female ancestor was ever naturalized and when the female ancestor was naturalized, because if she was never naturalized or naturalized after the child was already an adult, or even if she naturalized completely involuntarily and automatically, the outcome is basically guaranteed. And also, if you have other completely different ancestors that you never looked into, maybe you were focusing on one set of great-grandparents, but you have another set of great-grandparents, it's of course worthwhile looking into their citizenship status and understanding when they became naturalized, because maybe the couple of great-grandparents that you never thought you would use to apply for citizenship is the best choice, because maybe they never became naturalized. And a lot of our clients, they come to us with the intention to use a set of great-grandparents, but then we end up doing research on our own on the other great-grandparents, and we inform the clients that we have found all of the information that is necessary to present the case through them, and we inform the client that they're the best choice because they never naturalized. And therefore, my suggestion for people who go through the process by themselves is to research all of the possible Italian ancestors to decide which one is the best to use to apply for citizenship by descent. Or if you're using Italiancitizenshipassistance.com, we'll do that kind of research, of course, for you.
Thank you so much, Marco. And I think that actually is some really amazing advice. I know even for me, I ended up finding out, years after I got my Italian citizenship, about a part of my family that I had no clue was connected to Italy. There was some parts of my family were Italian, some parts are not, but there was one line that I thought, no way, there's no connection to Italy. And then I ended up having a conversation with my grandmother, and she's like, oh yeah, no, this person was Italian, they came from Italy, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, so there are going to be maybe instances in a person's life where they're going to find out something from a relative of theirs that maybe they didn't have this piece of information before. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not relevant, but within our families, sometimes there are details that maybe we don't even know about. So definitely be sure to look into your family, do all the research that you can, or get somebody that is able to help you, like the experts at ItaliancitizenshipAssistance.com. But of course, Marco, if anybody's looking for help to get their Italian citizenship, how can they get in contact with you and your team?
People can contact us through our website, ItalianCitizenshipAssistance.com, or give us a call. Our number is on the website.
Absolutely fantastic. And of course, if you're interested in more topics like this about how to get Italian citizenship or even how to purchase property in Italy, be sure that you're subscribed to this YouTube channel, because not only are you subscribed to the Italian Citizenship Podcast, but also the Italian Real Estate Podcast. But of course, be sure to subscribe on the audio-only podcasting platforms. You can find those through Google or your favorite podcasting platform of choice. And of course, if you're interested more about life abroad and living abroad as a dual citizen expat, be sure to come over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rafael Di Furia, or you can search Google, YouTube, or your podcasting player of choice for Not Your Average Globetrotter. Of course, we've been here again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian from ItalianCitizenshipassistance.com. I'm Rafael Di Furia. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we will see you all next time. Later.
Thank you.